Back to the daily grind, and shout out to the full-time patrons. Make sure to hit subscribe if you're new and hit thumbs up if you're not a baby back bagel biting bitch boy, cause you know what time it is. It's full time.
MMA.
ESPN has added 15 extra fights to the 15 they already had in the deal that was announced, I believe, last week. So now they'll have a total of 30 UFC fights in a new TV rights deal. And the total value will be $1.5 billion over 5 years. So that's about $300 million a year. This was reported by Variety.com. It says sources familiar with negotiations say ESPN has struck a deal for a second portion to the package currently held by Fox Sports that will bring the total cost in the neighborhood of $300 million per year for 5 years, totaling $1.5 billion. The new deals, which cover a total of 30 fights per year, kick in early 2019. So this is going to be the beginning of 2019. So with that being said, though, what this means to me is we might never see Conor McGregor back in this octagon. We already heard Conor McGregor talking about a piece of the pie in the past, and if he sees this $1.5 billion pie, you can only imagine he's going to want some. I already seen Chris Cyborg share this article, and she was like $1.5 billion. That's all she put. Now, as far as pay-per-views are concerned, those are still going to be remaining normal, remaining the same. ESPN doesn't get the pay-per-views, so the pay-per-views are still going to be the same from what I've been reading so far. UFC still gets the pay-per-views, but this is just going to be for ESPN and ESPN Plus. I believe some fights are going to be free on TV, ESPN, you know, like big ESPN, and then some are going to be on ESPN Plus, maybe similar to Fox Sports 1, you know, in the past. There was Fox Sports 1 and Big Fox. Well, this is going to be more like ESPN and ESPN Plus. Now, ESPN Plus, I believe you pay $4.99 a month for, but you're going to get a lot of content that really seems like it's going to be worth $4.99 a month. But it looks like UFC is also going to be continuing Fight Pass from what I've read as well. So you'll probably still get to see like the grappling, the Muay Thai, all of that type of stuff, some UFC extra content over on Fight Pass. I'll keep you guys updated on that, but let's just stick to Conor McGregor though, because there, you know, we know Conor McGregor, he hasn't been back since he fought Floyd Mayweather. Since then, we have seen him back around the UFC when he threw a damn dolly through a window and got 4 fights canceled off at UFC 223. But just talking about Conor McGregor actually coming back to fight, if he sees this deal, I can only imagine it's going to be this much harder to negotiate with the Conor McGregor. And this is just, you know, I'm not going to go too far into how much, you know, the fighters, I don't think, you know, they're probably getting like a certain amount of percentage of this like other sports. But Conor McGregor, I'm sure his team, his lawyers, whoever is doing his business has their eye on this deal. And if they just, and you can't compare the UFC to the NBA and the NFL because they're different, right? Those have been around longer. And when you think about the UFC, it's more like boxing and it's more like the WWE in a sense, right? It's a combat sport. So I don't even know if this comparison works, but this is just my head as a fan, right? I've watched the NBA and the NFL, and I know a little bit about their TV rights deal just from watching ESPN and stuff, you know? So, and you hear about like the NBA not too long ago had a lockout, right? And they get like 50% of the TV deal. Now, we're not even going to bring up the pay-per-views and you also have to keep in mind that the UFC has an operating cost. They've got employees, they've got to set up the fights, bring the octagon, hire the people, you know, pay the commentators and all of that stuff. So they have operating costs, and we don't know those numbers. So that's why we can't do too much of a deep dive into this. But I'm just going off the TV rights deals, right? I just wanted to pull up, and actually I did this right before. So let's check this out. Okay, so just off $300 million a year, right? $300 million. So that's $300 million. And there's about 50 fighters in each weight class, give or take. Like, I was trying to find that exact number. I couldn't really find it, but I found something on like Wikipedia, and it was like, it had a list, and it was pretty updated of active UFC fighters. I counted there were about 50 heavyweights, 45 give or take. So I'm just estimating here. This is just a rough estimate, so don't take these numbers too serious if you're anybody out there. So $300 million, and we'll just say there's 50 fighters in each weight class. Well, there's 11 weight classes, so take that 11 times 50, and you get 550 fighters. So let's just say there's 550 active fighters on the roster, and if this was the NBA or the NFL and the fighters were getting like 50%, right? Then what's 50% of $300 million? That would be 150 million bucks. So let's take that off, clear that. Where's the clear button on this little calculator? So the fighters, if they were getting 50% of the TV deal, 1, 2, 3, there's those zeros. So divided by 550 fighters, that would be the average salary of a UFC fighter right there, 272,000 bucks. And I'm just saying that would be the average. You know, Conor McGregor would probably be making more, and the newcomers would probably be making less. But that would just be an average of what the fighters would be making if they got 50% of this TV deal, this brand new TV deal. Now, one thing you also have to for sure keep in mind is that the UFC sold for $4.4 billion. And so this $1.5 billion is over 5 years, which means even after this 5 years, the UFC is not going to have half of that debt paid, depending, you know, and that's, we don't know how much they're making off the pay-per-views, you know. But I'm just saying, like, going off of this deal, it's still not, it's putting a dent in the $4.4 billion, but you can see how the UFC is still a little behind on that payment, right? So with that being said, though, after what, 10-15 years, then the UFC is going to be all in the clear profit, probably making a whole lot of money if it continues to grow and become one of the bigger sports of the world. In 10 or 15 years, this might seem like a good investment if the UFC continues to grow and becomes the household sport, right? As, I mean, I would assume so. I don't know. It might not be. I know, but the UFC actually wanted more for this deal from Fox, you know, but the deals didn't come out. That's what I was reading from this report. The UFC didn't actually get as much as they might have liked for these UFC rights, but they signed with ESPN. They're not splitting the deal with any other companies, and moving into Fox, I believe, is actually the WWE. So the WWE is going to be replacing the UFC on Fox, but the UFC has a new home on ESPN with a new deal worth $1.5 billion over 5 years. With that being said, it is what it is. Let the full-time family know what you think about this in the comments. I'm out. And as always, thanks for checking out this video. If you want to join the notification gang, make sure you hit subscribe and also hit the bell next to it so you're notified every time I upload a video. And if you want to help this channel reach its full potential, consider hitting the PayPal link in the description or going to patreon.com/fulltimemma and becoming a patron. I'm out.
This is #1 bullshit.